A couple more in the back.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Hi. Hey.
Yep.
Grant. Hi, John. Thanks. Happy Thanksgiving to you. President Biden stood by calling President Xi a dictator at the APEC press conference. China's foreign ministry condemned this as, quote, extremely incorrect and irresponsible political manipulation. What is the administration's response or reaction to this?
We came away from San Francisco with some concrete deliverables on fentanyl, on military-to-military communications, on getting our two teams together to start working on artificial intelligence, particularly in the national security realm. There was an awful lot of very good outcomes out of this meeting between President Biden and President Xi, and the president's looking forward. We're looking forward to managing this relationship in a more responsible way and moving things forward, looking for ways where we can cooperate, but also not being afraid to confront where we can't, including on the tensions in the South China Sea. So the president's and his whole national security team is focused forward now, coming out of San Francisco.
Still going to call him a dictator each time you see him?
The president made it very clear. He was asked a direct question. He gave a direct answer, and he stands by that direct answer. That doesn't mean, as true as that statement was, doesn't mean that there aren't still prospects here to find ways to cooperate and to compete with China in a more responsible way going forward, and that's where the president's head is.
When these two leaders met, did they agree to meet again or speak again in the near term?
They agreed that they would meet again, but there was no date put on the calendar. What's really important now is that the military-to-military comms will begin to start, and even down to the theater commander level, and maybe even lower than that. So that's the immediate channels of communication that we're looking at getting back open.
Stephen, go ahead.
Thank you, Karine. I've got a question about fentanyl, then a question about the Gaza conflict. On fentanyl, the Chinese president committed to reducing the export of fentanyl and fentanyl precursors. But under President Biden, there have been 200,000 Americans who have stopped breathing and died as a result of these chemicals. As of earlier this year, we're still at record monthly numbers. If there is not a drop in American deaths, will President Biden hold the Chinese president personally responsible?
It was really significant what President Xi was willing to commit to for the first time now in several years. I mean, they're really going forward here and willing to take law enforcement action to shut down the export of these ingredients, the precursor chemicals that the labs, largely in our own hemisphere, are creating to make fentanyl. It's a big step forward, and we're grateful for that. And we'll see how they are in execution. And I think we all need to understand that it may be some time before you see the practical results of this crackdown on the precursors. But we're grateful for that. But it's not just the precursor chemicals. I'll try it again in English. But it's the labs in our own hemisphere that are taking those chemicals, those ingredients, making fentanyl, and then moving it north up to our borders. And it's a serious problem. And again, as the president said at the press conference, this agreement will save lives, will save American lives. And President Xi said he was committed to helping with that.
Before turning to the second question, just to follow up on that, the Chinese president's in charge of a single-party state. He's said in the past that he'd crack down on fentanyl, and U.S. deaths hit an all-time record last year. I mean, is President Biden not going to consider him personally responsible if American deaths do not go down?
He has said he was going to be personally responsible for stemming the flow of these chemicals out of China, and we're grateful for that. That's going to take a little bit of time as he goes back to Beijing and puts those processes in place, those law enforcement actions. We're grateful for that.
I gave you a really good introduction, too. I apologize for that. So we already have 2 yeses, so this is not meatloaf, so 2 out of 3 ain't good here. Not everybody got that reference, but we don't use that in the Christian ministry very often, meatloaf, and 2 out of 3 ain't bad. We're talking about should Iowa actually lead this process, the Iowa caucus process. And Governor DeSantis was just talking about decency and people of faith and taking this serious. What do you think? Is this something that they should do?
I think it's what Iowa has always done. You know, and the reason why I can respect where Iowa's coming from is South Carolina really holds tight to being the first, you know, state in the South to vote. And I think that looking at it, Iowa gets it's about faith, family, and country. And it's a great start to a presidential process when that is front of mind for everyone. And then it goes into New Hampshire, and I know by the time it gets to South Carolina is also thinking faith, family, country. And so I think it makes sense that this is the start. It's always worked well. And, you know, we're going to all see that play out again, and I think it's right.
Good answer. Vivek, anything you'd like to add? Because you said yes, but I want to give you an opportunity to add.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually with the group this morning, and I'll tell you what I told them, which was, you know, so much of this electoral process takes place through the media, right? Through the filters of cameras, through social media algorithms. I mean, look at today. It's a room full of us here having an open conversation at a table freely speaking, no social media algorithms in the air, no TV screens in the air. And one of the things that I've learned in traveling this country is I've changed my mind on something since we started in this campaign. When we started in February, I was convinced that we're a nation divided. Okay, the task of uniting this country was going to be monumentally difficult, but that was my purpose, and we wanted to set out and see if we could do it. I've now traveled to a majority of states in this union, across Iowa as well. I don't think we're nearly as divided as the media teaches us that we are, right? If you turn on the social media apps on your phone, or you watch cable television on a given night, sure, you're led to believe that we're divided. And I think the way we call the bluff on that national division is all of us starting to speak openly again. Right? There's a gap between what people are willing to say in private and what they're willing to say in public. I think that's the measure of our country's health. How big is that gap? And what I've seen in Iowa, and I think this is why the caucus is what it is. If you asked me a year and a half ago, I would have said I wouldn't known the difference, whether Iowa goes first or not. I'm now first in the nation evangelist, because people have, and the truth is, I mean, people understand that they want to ask the questions straight to your face that even the media won't ask. And that's how our country's supposed to work, and we're going to keep it that way regardless of what the other side does.
Awesome. Well said again.